RFIs, requests for information. They are often the very first source of tension in a construction project in the dynamic between contractors and designers and architects. And that's where my guest today, Slater Latour, comes in. He is the Chief Marketing and Product Officer at Newforma. Newforma created the Project Information Management Software category, or the PIM category, back in 2004 to improve information management, communication, and efficiency across the design, build, project lifecycle. Our discussion today is all about how to improve the process of submitting and responding to RFIs and how to reduce that natural tension that occurs between contractors and designers when it comes to getting a project built. Slater does a really great job framing the challenges that we have in the construction industry when it comes to taking a concept or a design and building it in the real world. And of course, that's where a lot of these RFIs come in. And so we dive in to how that whole process can be managed more effectively. And you're going to want to listen very carefully to how some of that conflict is overcome and think about how Slater's ideas and suggestions can enable you to handle the RFI process more effectively. I really appreciate you listening to Construction Genius. Feel free to share this interview with anyone that you think may benefit from it. Give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts, and enjoy my conversation today with Slater. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. All right, Slater, welcome to Construction Genius. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Eric. Appreciate it.
All right, it's time to get into a topic of tension on every construction project, it seems, and that is the RFI. You are an expert when it comes to some of the issues surrounding RFIs, so I'd like to ask you, why does that tension exist on a construction project in the realm of dealing with RFIs? Yeah,
it's a great question. And so ultimately, I think it starts from the fact that RFIs add time to the project, and time is a cost, a very real cost when it comes to delivering construction projects. And then, I think that there's a tension between the main constituents here, meaning the contractor and the design firms, because the design firm is going to be inclined to say, the design was great and you should have just looked closer at the documents, and the contractor is out in the field and is dealing with the real world, the physical world, and obviously isn't going to feel that way. So there's just a natural tension around work gets created, and is this work necessary? Is it going to lead to a change order, which is a bad outcome for the owner who's ultimately funding this whole thing? So it always comes down to cost and time and efficiency.
In your mind, who's ultimately responsible in a construction project for the efficient processing of RFIs? Who's responsible? Yeah,
I think that's kind of another layer of this tension. It is a collaborative. Getting an RFI closed out is a collaborative effort, and no one really, I think, owns it fully because it requires input from both sides. And if those two sides aren't working together well, then the project will suffer. But ultimately, the cost is going to be borne by the project itself. And without a clear owner who is directly affected by the outcome and the speed of resolution, that's where I think some of these tensions emerge, because at the end of the day, whoever's paying for the project's going to try to hold everyone accountable.
I think it's interesting, though, because you touched on something at the beginning. I work with a lot of contractors, and the thing I hear from them is every design that we get isn't great because people are rushing projects so quickly that it's typically going to generate all of those RFIs. So the construction company gets frustrated because the quality of design in their minds isn't that great most of the time.
Yeah, and look, I'd counter. I mean, maybe that's true. I mean, our firms work really hard and deliver a lot of projects, but I would say the counterpoint to that is, look, it's this industry is doing a hard thing, right? It's trying to take a knowledge asset and it's trying to turn that into a real thing. It's, if all you had to do was build something on your computer, like, we'd probably be zero RFIs on a construction progress if we lived in the digital world. But what we're trying to do, what are all the different firms are trying to do, is very difficult. It's trying to imagine something in an empty space that doesn't exist, draw that, and then actually build it. So I think that, it's hard and it's probably not possible to do a design so perfectly that result in zero RFIs, because everything in the physical world doesn't follow a schedule. Things happen. Spaces aren't the same shape that you thought they were when you were looking at it from a bird's eye view. So yeah, I think that sure, the designs aren't perfect, but nothing ever is.
I really like the way you frame that there. We're taking a knowledge asset and we're turning that into a real thing. And we're doing it in a unique space. It's not a cookie cutter thing that we're doing at all. So I think that's terrific that you said that what we're doing here is very, very difficult. So what is it that we can do, do you think, to reduce that tension? And let's just assume that we're not going to lay blame on the designer. We're not going to lay blame on the contractor. We're all in this together. We're going to have a good attitude about it, so to speak. What can we do to reduce that tension around RFIs?
Yeah, I think that's taking ownership on both sides to provide the appropriate context around the RFI and make sure that it's submitted to all the people that need to answer the question with that context attached. So, where is it in the drawing? Can we relate? And this is something where technology can start to help more. Can we relate the RFI to a point in the drawing, the 2D drawing, which would make up the basis of underlying contract document, as well as the 3D model? And can we make sure that gets distributed to the designer and then any of the other people within the design side of it, the consultants and the engineers, with all that stuff attached, and then go back and then sync back to the construction side with that context as well? It's just going to lead to faster resolution, where you can work within the context of, to the best of your ability, work within the context of the thing you're trying to address.
Okay, so let's talk about that. In terms of context, what are the pieces of information that are most typically missed in the RFI process in your experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, it can be a variety of things. It can be, and some of it's just how the underlying technology works, right? Like, you might send something over and say it relates to this part of a drawing, but the model may have been incredibly useful there. And can you submit both the 2D location of the RFI and the 3D rendering of that physical space, of that space as well? So yeah, it's going through the effort. It's going through the effort at the creation of the RFI to make sure it's fully documented, and the technology needs to support that too.
So I know there's a number of studies that the average amount of time for an RFI response is just about 10 days. Over 20% of RFIs never get responded to at all. The average total cost per RFI review and response is over $1,000. And you're going to get like 10 requests for every $1 million worth of project value. So these are statistics, and what they're screaming to us is time and money. And when things are taking more time and when money's being spent, the end result of that is pain, right? Pain for everybody involved. What is one way to reduce that pain significantly, but consistently, and in a way that removes as much as possible the human elements of inattention or inexactitude that often come up?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think so. I think even at the outset of a project where there's some tension between design firms and construction firms, is that the decision has to get made: what construction management solution are we going to use to exchange these types of documentation? And whether or not the contractor, quote unquote, wins and it's going to be their system of record that's going to be used, or if the design firm wins, both sides are going to keep very detailed records of all of these exchanges. And what can happen there is, regardless of who's using the system, whose system is going to be used officially, now you've got two systems with the same sets of data,
Yeah.
which means you've got administrators on the project that have to basically do everything twice, both for their own system of record and within the contractor's system of record, or vice versa. And so to me, that's just totally a dead weight loss on a project. So like, how can we start? The internet has made a lot of things possible that weren't, even 10, 20 years ago. So how can we start to make it that exchange of data from the contractor's preferred solution to the design firm's preferred solution, so that you only have someone needing to upload all this stuff once. And so everyone's working from exactly the same set of data, context, communications, backup. And so that is just like, because as I'm sure as everyone can relate to, when you're asking people to manually track data and then upload supporting documents to multiple systems, eventually something is going to get missed.
Yep.
So you're not going to have those two record keeping systems match. And I'm sure that's where a lot of the problems start to arise, is someone knows something that someone else hasn't seen yet. And that's where technology can really help.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because your company Newforma is positioning itself in such a way to provide that hub for the information.
Yes, absolutely. So that hub for that information, and offering as many as we can deliver, those sync points, that automated sync between the preferred contractor solutions. So we today have customers that working on projects where the contractor can work in Procore. Our design customers will be working in Newforma, and the information on the RFIs are syncing between the two constantly. So, the turnaround times on that stuff is just much faster, because you've removed the duplicate record keeping just at the outset. So and I think then on once we're in the project, from our point of view, contractors tend to work entirely from official specifications, the drawings, the contract documents, whereas during the design phase there'll be a lot of unofficial communication, emails between different designers asking questions that could be important. So because we bring all of that information into one place for our customers, all that information can be related to these objects, these RFIs, and so you're going to get much faster resolution, because you're going to have the full context of how decisions got made during the design phase all at your fingertips. So you don't need to go track down an email, PDF it, add it to the RFI. All that stuff can be related within the system.
So what you guys are doing is you're removing sort of the tension about whose software system are we going to use, by providing this hub so that all the information from these various places is collated together. And the goal of that is to reduce, just as far as RFIs are concerned, to reduce the amount of time it takes for a response to an RFI. Is that correct?
That's, you said it better than I did, Eric.
So let me ask you, if the survey that I've looked at, if it's saying 9.7 days for an RFI response, what are you guys looking at as far as the time for an RFI response?
Yeah, I mean, our customers have said the place that we want to get to is 2 days. And I say, why not?
Okay. So the ideal is 2 days. Are you guys at that measurably, or are you sort of on the journey to that? What are you thinking here?
We're on the journey of that. When we see in our connected project, and obviously there's so much variance about what could cause. It's hard to measure, especially when you consider that we also have to think about like what's a business day versus what's if someone submits an RFI on a Friday and it is responded to on Tuesday, is that 2 days or is that 4?
No, I get it.
So there's a lot of problems with measurement there, but we have seen an appreciable decline.
So it's interesting because there's a lot of work in the construction space at the moment from companies that are looking to be hubs of information, because there's so much disparity and different solutions, on the sort of the process side of the software. Yeah. Being a hub is definitely a good pitch or a good opportunity to pursue. What I'm interested in your experience working with engineers, designers, and construction companies. What are some of the challenges that you see them coming up against again and again when it comes to technology selection and implementation?
Yeah. So I think there's a number of ways to approach that question. Some of it's just, I would say, and this is a mind-blowing answer, I think there's a big part of it that's that's just inertia, right? I mean,
Right.
when you're delivering, as we said at the beginning of our conversation, like what we're asking people to do is very hard.
Yeah.
And so they need really specialized knowledge around how to actually build something or how to actually create a set of drawings that would enable someone to build something. To then also say you need to be really tech savvy and relearn a whole bunch of, internal processes tends to be difficult. So there's a lot of support that needs to go into change management there when you're talking about the complexity and scale of the types of projects that our customers are dealing with. So I'd say that's the big one. That's the big one. And then it's just the second piece of it is there's been the technology in the space has been around for quite a long time. So a lot of it was designed and architected with the idea that it's going to be sitting on a server. It's going to be siloed, and what the internet has enabled is a lot of clean, immediate syncs of data across systems, even if those two systems have different users and different owners. And so there's been, on the technology side, a need to update the design of the software, the architecture of the software to even enable something like, once these documents are assembled, immediately send them over into the architect system or the engineer system and make those and put them in the right place given the design of those systems. So it's something of there's always the human challenge, and then there's the technology challenge of modernizing what technology people use across the board. And there's a lot of players, and it's all very, we're not talking about an industry where you've got some large players, certainly, but other than that, it tends to be very fragmented. So there's a lot of work to connect the ecosystem together.
Yeah, it's interesting. Construction is, if there's one word that sums up construction, it's fragmented, and that really leads to a lot of the complexities and the difficulties. In using something like Newforma, I can immediately see, people who are listening to the show, they can see the logic of the solution in terms of being a hub for information, but then a big sigh, I got to get another piece of software. I got to get another technology implemented. How do you guys reduce the friction associated with yet another piece of technology? Yeah,
it's a great question. And I'd say that's kind of where we started from in terms of how we deliver. So Newforma is purpose-built in a way not to replace something, but to make everything work together better. So you're not going to have to undertake, if you deploy Newforma, you're not going to undertake a major data transfer from one document storage solution to another. It's core to what we do to say, no, use what you're using. Our software will just look at that, make it searchable, index it, put it in a project context so that you don't have to undertake a heavyweight migration, which is not to say there's no effort involved, but we're hopeful that it's less effort than other solutions where you do have to move everything from system A to system B. What is the one or two reasons, the big reasons why a company would say, you know what, I'm not interested in using Newforma? That's a good question that I probably shouldn't answer honestly, since I head up marketing at Newforma. But it goes back to that you mentioned the challenge of the industry to change, and it's that okay, we know what we have to do for the technology side to implement Newforma, but then how do we actually get adoption? How do we get people to change how they actually work day to day? Because at the end of the day, it's, what people get paid for is getting these projects done. Yep. And it's not, following the rules around how the IT department said you need to do information management. Right. So it's the human side of change management that I think that really starts to scare people, and that only gets scarier when you're talking about firms with every 50 employees, every 100 employees that you're talking about that would need to embrace a change in process. It gets harder and scarier. And so that's an interesting thing as far as that change management is concerned. In your experience working with the firms that you work with, what are some of the hallmarks of the companies that manage change most successfully? Yeah, executive. It's always the same. It's always having it's always identifying the right champions within the firm, but then real executive buy-in and the modeling of behaviors that's going to make it work, successful or unsuccessful. I think that's true of every software deployment.
That's interesting, though, but that's very, very, very important there. You got to get the right champions in the firm. You've got to get the executive buy-in, and then the executives modeling the behavior. When you say the champions, do you find typically that the executives buy in and then they pick champions to sort of execute?
I'd say it's the opposite. I'd say it's the champions see early in the discovery process. It's the champions that are like, oh, I see how this would change my life in terms of delivering the projects. And then it's them selling up to at the executive level. But both things have to happen effectively.
That's a challenge, though, because then the executives have to be willing to listen to those folks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a staple of good leadership that you spend a lot more time listening than you do speaking.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
That's interesting, though, because again, if I'm the executive of a construction company, sometimes I might just say, just build the project. Stop coming to me with new stuff and get the stuff built so that we make some money and we can move on to the next one. And so I think it's important that executives have the right mindset when they have those champion types people coming to them with these new ideas. Yeah,
it's a careful balance, right? Because you do need that as a leader too. Like there are times where you have to have a hard conversation where it's like, the priority right now is to get this done and move on versus the priority now is to improve our processes across the board so that, we're not just thinking 3 months out, we're thinking a year out, 2 years out, 5 years out.
That's excellent. So what are some, let's just as we wrap up here, let's just get to some foundations. Let's assume that everyone's got the right intentions at the beginning of the project. The architects and the engineers, they're believing the best for the contractors. The contractors don't hate the architects and engineers yet. What can they do to come together at the very beginning and lay a solid foundation, particularly in light of the RFI process, so that we can do our best to mitigate the pain and make things as smooth as possible? Yeah,
I think expectation setting is a big one. Expectation setting, everyone really doing their pre-work, so that they come into the project prepared. They've really looked through the design and the design intent documentation and really understand at a detailed level what the expectations are and agree to what the process will be. What it wouldn't hurt to say from the outset, like, we have a target for what the turnaround time is on these RFIs, as opposed to, because it's like, is 10 days good? As you mentioned in the survey, and 10 days seems like a long time, but if 10 years ago or 25 years ago it was 20, then there's been a major improvement to get down to 10.
Yeah.
So it's defining the benchmarks to measure performance against, so that, because what's going to happen is, if, let's say, it's the average is 12 days on a certain project, but no one set the expectations at the beginning, what the turnaround, like what the deliverables were, who can say if that's good or bad, right? Then you're just going to go against an industry survey. Like, there should be, based on what everyone knows about the project, the difficulty and complexity of the project, it shouldn't be hard to come to at least a high level agreement on how we'll work together at the beginning, so you're not arguing about it while it's happening.
Yeah, I really like that. So come to an agreement at the beginning, so you're not arguing about it while it's happening. And I really like that idea of setting some benchmarks in terms of what is the expectation for a turnaround of an RFI, so that you can then track that through the project.
Yes, exactly. So it's the leaders on the project coming together, bringing that context from, like, the last project we worked on, we struggled with these things with working the design firm. Can we try this? And having everyone be open to that. I think that's true of any kind of complex work with multiple collaborators, but in particular, like we said, this is not easy stuff that we're asking people to do. So that can only help.
That's excellent. So Slater, how can we get in? How can the audience get in touch with you guys? Where can they find out more information about Newforma?
Yeah, absolutely. So newforma.com is our website. There's a lot of educational content. We want people to spend time, understand what it is that we do, and then you can write from our contact form. You could actually if you feel that we're looking at for the audience, we're looking at the form right now, you could schedule a consultation with someone on our solutions side right from this form.
Excellent. Excellent. So we'll put those links in the show notes. Now, you guys are based out of Manchester, New Hampshire, right?
That's correct. Manchester, New Hampshire, offices all over the world, though.
And are you currently in New Hampshire?
I'm not today. I'm out of Boston, so I'm at my home office. But I spend a good amount of time in Manchester, and I'm looking forward to, once travel becomes like it used to be, spending time with our offices everywhere else.
Okay, so that's good news that you're in Boston, Slater, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm going to be in Boston later this year with one of my kids doing the tour of the Boston.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, tour of the Boston site. So I need some help here, man. Where do I go to eat in Boston?
Do you know where you're staying yet?
No, but just throw something out there because I can always be motivated by food. Yeah.
Okay, my favorite nice restaurant in Boston is Abe and Louie's, which is a steakhouse on Newbury Street.
Abe and Louie's?
Abe and Louie's.
Oh, Abe and Louie's. Okay, yep.
Yes, they do an absolutely wonderful job. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones.
Well, so let me ask you you may not know the answer. Let's say I've got a bunch of kids, right?
Yep.
But I don't want to eat a McDonald's. I want to eat slightly upgraded and maybe local. Where am I going?
Okay, then there's a bunch of options over in the North End because you're going to get wonderful Italian food, large portions.
There you go.
Priced.
Where's that?
Bricco is a wonderful restaurant in the North End, but there's a ton right in that little area that an experience to go to and great food, large portions.
Okay, so is that Bricco, did you say?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, just for the audience sake, we will have links in the show note to Abe and Louie's and also to Bricco. Slater, I really appreciate your time today. We'll make sure we'll get all the other links to Newforma in the show notes. And thanks for sharing your insights with us today.
Thanks so much. Thrilled to be here, Eric. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Today's episode was brought to you by the Construction Conclave. If you as a construction leader would like to develop your skills and get involved in a community of like-minded construction professionals who are focused on building healthy teams, profitable projects, and long-term successful businesses, then the Construction Conclave is for you. It's a private invitation-only group of construction leaders that are focused on developing their leadership skills. We do training every single month online that looks at how to become a better leader in a very practical, straightforward way. We also have other events that build community and camaraderie so that you can associate with others who are interested in developing their skills as leaders. If you'd like more information and to see if you qualify for participating in the conclave, feel free to reach out to me, eric@ericanderton.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.